Welcome to USFL Today. I'm your host, Angelo Fioris, and I'm happy to have you here for another great off-season edition of our show. Make sure you follow our Twitter account at USFL Today. That's where you'll get all kinds of news and updates, whatever we're able to find for you and share with you. Also, head over to YouTube and look for our YouTube channel. It's called at USFL Today, and that's where you'll be able to find all of these shows. Subscribe, set your notifications, and don't miss an episode. We've got lots of cool stuff coming up with lots of cool players and shows tied into, let's just say when we get closer to the regular season, there's going to be some more productions coming from the USFL Today crew. And now let's get on with this week's episode. I'm happy to bring on my guest. He's a wide receiver from the Pittsburgh MAULERS. His name, Isiah Hennie. Isiah, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I appreciate you for having me, man. I'm down. I'm good, man. It's fun to be part of the show.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad to have you. The Maulers are one of those teams that kind of had a rough year last year, and so it almost seems like we didn't get to know many of the players because all the attention was focused on Birmingham and New Jersey and New Orleans and then Philadelphia as we got to the end of the year. So Pittsburgh, you guys were sort of like the stepchild, got a little bit of forgotten. So I'm happy that you're here and we're going to get to know you a little bit today.
Absolutely, man. I felt a little disrespect out there, but I had a blast playing for Pittsburgh, playing for the team. Our fans didn't lose any optimism about our team throughout the league, or throughout the year. So I was excited to be a part of it all.
Yeah, you joined a little bit late. You got in around week 5 or so. So
Mm-hmm.
you played half the season, but you did have quite an eventful half a season, didn't you?
Yeah. My mom's big on, stay ready. She wanted to get ready. And, I stayed ready, stayed the course. And so I was able to make a splash right when I got there. It was a dwindled receiver room in terms of injuries. There was only 3 other guys when I got there. And the good thing about the other guys is we're all Cali guys. So we all got each other. And so it's easy to gel with the dudes. Um, and they were just, hey, we're all trying to do the same thing here. So they welcomed me with open arms, and we were able to make, even though we didn't win any games, we were able to make some plays for ourselves and at least have a little bit of confidence going into the next season.
Yeah, I would say that you definitely built up some confidence. You had a couple of games in particular that stood out. Your game against New Jersey was quite a good one in week 8. Matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
offensive play of the game was your touchdown pass from Roland Rivers. You caught that ball on the left sideline and you found some open space towards the middle and you sprinted to the end zone almost untouched. Great play,
Yeah.
all instinct. Huh? You really showed something there.
Yeah. So, I mean, that, all that goes back to just playing tag, just staying out the way. When you're my stature and you start playing with some guys, like I think one of my favorite competitors was Yates from Birmingham, the Ole Miss guy. And so, he's real when he tackles, he's kind of like he wasn't what you would say orthodox. He wasn't like a scripted dude. Like he didn't form tackle me once that game. Everything was kind of just wrangling and kind of wrestling. So once I got that game out the way, it was kind of it was very different for me. So I was like, okay. So I kind of stayed out the way. I didn't want to take any full speed shots from anybody, and so um, God blessed me, and I was able to just kind of make do with what I have and kind of get to the end zone.
Yeah, you guys gave the Generals some trouble in that game. That touchdown closed the gap and increased the pressure on them. And you guys even did get the ball back with a chance to close it to one score before
Mm-hmm.
that drive stalled. I believe turned it over on downs just inside the 10-yard line around 6-minute mark. And that was kind of it for
Yeah.
you guys that day. But you also had a nice game in the season closer against Michigan. You had only 3 grabs, but 2 of them were for scores, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
nice for a guy that only played half a year. You had some pretty hefty contributions, hitting pay dirt 3 times, also returning kicks. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Another big part of your game. So you're a multifaceted player with the ball.
Yeah, that's kind of everyone has the same goal and they're trying to hit the machine, hit the league after but USFL is nothing to kind of marvel at. It's a good league and I had a lot of fun doing it. And so it's like when teams call, you're not getting the call to go play wide receiver number 1 or even play slot. They say, hey, how can you contribute on special teams, because that's where a lot of guys are, especially from our league to that league, that's where they're going to make their mark. And so that's, you saw Victor Bolden got a shot, Maurice Alexander got a shot, and I always felt like when it came to being a returner in the league, I thought I was the guy. I thought I could have been one of the guys if I had gotten in there earlier, but
Right.
Kavonte Turpin obviously was a was a player selected all pro in the NFL. And I feel like me and him had a lot of similarities. We had a lot of respect for each other's game when we played each other. So, yeah, it's just finding your way in through special teams. And then after that, then you get to show coaches, I'm able to play receiver too, or I'm able, I have a little bit of ability to play DB as well, just because I train with the DBs a lot and just because it's a lot more fun. So, yeah, finding that niche and finding a way to be successful on the field and just get on the field was kind of my number one goal.
So when you were brought in late May of last year, were you brought in for your special teams contributions? Because the room, like you said, was dwindling for the wide receivers, or was it like, hey, come in, play special teams, but you're going to see reps at receiver?
Yeah, so that's there's pros and cons to coming into a losing team. And they did come off of a win the week that I came. So they did come off of a win. However, the heat started picking up. Nutrition and attrition, kind of plays a role. So I didn't go into that game thinking I was going to play receiver, but when the game starts going, we had an 11 o'clock game, I think, that day. So second quarter hits and it's about 90 degrees out with, 40%, 50% humidity and, got some West Coast guys. So I was sitting there, there's a couple clips of me, not on my hands and knees, but you see, I'm kind of squatting down, trying to catch some air. So yeah, when attrition plays in, that's where I kind of made the mark. And I think that was actually one of my better receiving games, just kind of going out there. And, good thing about the Maulers with new quarterbacks at that time was the playbook was very simple. It was easy for me to pick up, and it was kind of just, day one install type of things that all I needed to know was terminology, and then I got to go in and play. So I had no intentions of trying to come in and take people's spots or anything like that, but I did just want to be a part of a team again because I had been sitting out for 4 years. So
Right.
it felt good to be out there.
Boy, it takes me to two different questions. So I'll start with one, right? You
Gotcha.
led me into it. You had a gap there, right? School ended, you finished at Sacramento State. You didn't play anywhere else in between, but yet you stayed ready. How do you stay ready and sharp when you don't get any game activity
Right.
in 4 years, and then you get a call halfway through a season that you didn't get any training camp time either? Tell me
Yeah.
about
So
that difficulty and that challenge.
that was a completely different thing in terms of just the mental battles that you face. A lot of people, when they kind of look back on football, they say, hey, you're a guy that plays football, not a football player. And I was always a person, I was like, no, I'm a football player. Like, football is in my DNA. I wanted to play in the NFL since I was 4, right? Some people like my brother. So my brother plays in the NFL. He's with the Giants right now. He was with the Rams. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams. So we got to do, that was a whole different spiel. But nonetheless, when it came to just attacking the game, I always felt like I could play. I always knew I could play. I always felt like I had the capabilities of playing. And so mentally, just getting no's after no after no after no, it kind of plays a role on you. And I hit kind of a dark spot right before the USFL because I had been 3 years out. I had went to like 6 or 7 different CFL workouts, and every single CFL was like, no, we love you. If we have a spot, we'll take you. And it got to even BC back in 2019. So 2 years after college, 2019 hits, and they're like, yeah, they asked me if I was ready to play, if I had my passport, etc. And then I was like, yeah. So then I got nothing. And they're like, yeah, we're going to see if we want you as a returner. Nothing happened. Then the next year, I'm about to get picked up by BC again, potentially COVID year. So I was like, so it's just kind of mentally playing games. And then I go to my first hub. I went to 3 hub camps, and I think that's a great program when they do it. I love the hub for what it provided me in terms of just networking and meeting people. Exposure, yeah. Now I went in there thinking, I'll get a CFL op because I haven't played in 3 years. And I killed that workout so much so that the Bengals scout still have his number to this day. So he's got to like me, He said, you know what, hey, we want to get you in for a workout. And last year, or not last year, but in 2021 in NFL, if you didn't have a vaccine, it was basically not going to happen. I didn't get vaccinated at time. And so if I was vaccinated, that's something that messed with me because my lady said, just get the vaccine, just kind of knock it out. And I was kind of just pushing it off. And sure enough, Cincinnati says, yeah, you need the vaccine. And so that was 2 months after she had recommended that I get it just in case. And so then, I get the vaccine. They're 2 weeks into camp. He said, yeah, I can't do anything for you now. So I was just like, I'm literally a shot away from getting the opportunity that I wanted. And so, yeah, that kind of put me into a spot where I was just not happy with myself. And then USFL runs around, and I'm like, this is finally gonna be my shot. I've missed the XFL draft, 3 CFL work or opportunities, missed the NFL opportunity because of a vaccine. So I'm like, I'm ready for the USFL. I get into the draft pool, and I remember draft day sitting with my boy C-Mac. He got drafted that morning because the receivers went right before the safeties.
Right.
And he said, and I remember the first receiver off the board was Victor Bolden. Now, we had been following the USFL podcast, people, whatever. Victor Bolden's name never came up ever in terms of who got into the player pool or anything like that. So when I saw his name, I said, oh, no. I said, they're pulling the NFL guys. And I said, I'm not going to get drafted today. So I'm trying to, keep my head up. And then sure, round 2 comes, more names I don't recognize. Round 3 comes, I'm not getting drafted today. And then obviously we're at a workout downtown Sacramento. So then, about 45 minutes later, the safety start going. He's the first safety off the board for Birmingham. So I'm ecstatic for him. And then, I get home and I kind of, tears start rolling down because I was like, I felt like that was my shot. But I was like, I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna be optimistic about it. And so, like, you see the kind of the emotions are starting to come back a little bit.
Sure.
Back there. That one kind of affected me. I was expecting my son, and I just felt like I just had engulfed in this football idea, and it wasn't happening for me. So it's kind of hard, 4 years in a row. So now, after they had a supplemental draft March 10th. So March 5th, I get in contact because C-Mac put me in contact with Brian Scott, who was the quarterback for the Philly Stars.
Stars, right.
Mm-hmm. And so I connected him. He said, hey, what do you want me to do for you? I said, basically, I want to prove to you that I'm worth a spot on your team. And so me and Brian Scott connect. I'm not going to say forever in debt, but I was so happy I could networked with him, and I got to meet him. He's an awesome guy, awesome story. I got to meet him down in Southern California. So me, him, and then my teammate Trey Walker, we all do a workout together versus a couple of DBs, and me and Trey just start ripping these DBs up. So much so that Brian Scott's like, hey, I'm gonna do everything I can to get you on the team. So I'm thinking, hey, you know what? He had a lot of influence on his first couple of guys at receiver. So I'm like, I'm gonna get picked up in the supplemental. So I'm like, hey, you know what? And that was March 5th. So the supplemental draft was 5 days later. So I was like, I drove back to Sacramento, which is a 6-hour drive from LA. Drove back to Sacramento. My brother was out there too, so it was cool to have him watch me work out. He had just came off a Super Bowl ring, so he's all feeling whatever.
Awesome.
Telling his stories and stuff. So I get back, and I remember March 10th, it's the night, but I didn't get my hopes up because I felt like it might not go my way just because I didn't get a call. Nothing happened. So I was like, it might not happen. And they went with Chris Rowland, another ex-NFL guy.
Right. So
I was just like, man. So I'm watching. So then I watch every USFL game, just hating on people, just like, I'm better than him. Just the animosity kind of brewed over time. And then after week 4, I realized the MAULERS, like they're missing receivers over and over. I'm like, dude, like I said, but I know him. I said, I think that's Trey from the workout. I said, let me hit him because we got each other's phone number and contact info. So I hit him. I said, hey, what's your GM's info and the coach's info? If I could help you guys, or if I can just come in and get a roster spot. He hit me back and said, bro, we need help. Here's the number. So I text Kirby Wilson. I text the GM Chris Watts at the time. I think he's a scout for the Steelers now. And Watts gets back to me, said, oh, we're not taking anybody in right now. So I was like,
yeah,
there's no way. There's only 3 receivers. But I'm like, no worries. So then, that's why networking's so important. I think that's the most important part of my game that I was missing over the time was the networking piece. As a person of faith, I'm a firm believer in faith without works is dead. And I was working out, but nobody knew I was working out. And in the social media age, you got to post something. I wasn't big on posting stuff. So my mentor, Akeem, he's Super Bowl winner with Show on Turf.
Sure, from the Rams. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So I went to school with a stepson, my boy Tristan. So we actually had a relationship before, but he was my receiver coach at 2 of my hub camps. Loved me. And so then Don Yee, who puts on the hub, Tom Brady's agent, called Kirby that week after the hub, because I went to the hub that week before. So I went to the hub, had another good workout. So Don Yee called Kirby. Akeem called Kirby, all saying, hey, I have a guy that could help you guys. So much so that he ended up going through his phone, and then he saw that I ended up texting him earlier that week.
He already had your info.
He already had my info. He watched my tape. He called me, said, hey, you know what? We really, really like you. Can you get here by Monday morning? And so, tears of joy start kind of
Yeah.
come out, but I couldn't cry. Like I wanted to cry, but I couldn't because I was just like, dude, like, let's get a flight. So, I'm at that point, I'm down to penny pinching. So, me and my girl get some money together, get my flight out there. And I remember I was just like, I'm practiced, I'm dying. But I remember the first game was such a surreal feeling because I'm in the helmet. I'm like, man, like, I wasn't even like not happy. I was just sitting there like, I can't even feel emotion. I was so numb because I was like, I thought I'd be super joy, crying, tears of joy, but I was so numb because I was like, dude, finally. But it felt like, not that I deserved it, but it was like I was so ready for the moment that I couldn't even cry because I was like, no, I've been ready for this. And then I had a good game. God bless me to stay healthy throughout it all because that's a lot of a lot of times that's
Half
what
the
happens.
battle.
Just staying healthy. So, yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of my spiel, especially over the last 2 years. But
It's a great
crazy,
story.
crazy time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story that you had to persevere for 4 years. You
Mm-hmm.
missed out on one draft. You missed out on a draft. You missed out on a supplemental draft. COVID, you name it. It all
Mm-hmm.
happened while you were piecing together your journey to your goal, and then you finally get there, and you had a nice half a season on
Thank you.
on a team that really didn't have a lot of bright spots, but had a lot of great players. The
Mm-hmm.
score didn't go your way in those games, but
Right.
at the end of the year, when you see how many guys made it to the next level and got called to the NFL camps after the season, there was a handful of guys on your defense, a couple guys on the offense, your kicker, there was more than enough talent to go around on that team. And I think a couple bounces here or there, a couple things happened a little bit differently earlier on, and it might
Mm-hmm.
not have been the same kind of season. But now it's a whole different year all of a sudden. Like
Yeah.
camp starts in 5 or 6 weeks, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 8, and you have a new head coach. You got new team colors.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be playing in a new place, and you have a new baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a lot of new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Oh
start with the
yeah.
new baby. Tell me about your baby.
Man, so I hope everyone gets to feel this. If you don't want to have kids and they don't want to have kids, awesome. But if you are able to have a kid as a man and you get a boy, you kind of want the boy to look just like you. And I remember, so the craziest thing about the baby, so the baby was born. So if you watch the Michigan game, the first half of the Michigan game, I had a horrible game. Okay, I got stripped on a punt return. I think I had 2 drop passes, and I was stressed because the night before, so Saturday morning, my lady tells me she's in labor. Water broke. So I'm like,
Uh-oh.
he was supposed to wait because he wasn't supposed to, his due date was July 13th. So it's after season. I'm fine. So June 18th, she called me and said, hey, I'm in labor. She goes to labor for 36 hours. Right.
Mm.
So hey, she's a trooper. Strongest person in the house right there. Okay.
Stronger than me.
Oh, it's crazy. So she said, yeah, I'm in labor. So I'm sitting there. I go through the walkthrough that morning, Saturday morning. I'm sitting there like just waiting on updates, seeing how it's gonna go. And then I get there and she's like, yeah, like I'm only, 7 meter dilated, but the water broke. So I don't know how long I'm gonna sit here. So I was like, okay. It's the first time her having a baby. So I guess labor takes a little bit longer. That's what the doctors were saying. So
Yeah,
I'm
first one's longer, right?
and I'm sitting there like, hey, so like, do you think he'll make it until I get home? My flight is right after the game. So the game ends at a certain time. I'm on the first flight out of there. I'll be home by 12 tomorrow night. Okay. You think he'll make it? Doctor's like, oh, I don't know. He might. So we'll see. So then the morning of the 19th, she said, hey, like, I think he's going to come this morning. Right. Or the night. Yeah. She said, he's going to come this morning. So I'm like, this is like 2 a.m. Alabama time. The game's at 11, I think, Alabama time. So I'm like, oh, he'll be here by kickoff. I'll be fine. Right. She's telling me she's pushing for 3 hours and there's not a lot of progress. And I'm like, I'm going out for warmups. I'm like, oh my God, I'm stressed. Trying to get through warmups. I get back from warmups thinking that I might see a picture of my baby. Nothing. So I
Uh-oh.
called her. I said, hey, how you doing? And she's like, I'm trying. It's just not working. I didn't yell at the doctor. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. So I'm sitting here going out to the game, what they called the toilet bowl that year. But it was just, all trying to get the first pick of the draft or whatever.
Right, the Michigan game.
The Michigan game, two last place teams trying to figure it out. But I'm sitting here trying to obviously get to the next level. And I'm like, I got to stay laser focused. I'm supposed to have a big game. Got a couple calls for me. Right. First punt return. I look green. I said, oh, it's time. Boom. I try to burst through. Hyman, who got picked up by the Packers, got a good hand on the ball. Just got a good hand on the ball. So I try to spin off of it. And he ended up getting them off. But the second gunner, I can't remember his name, boom, jumps on the ball. And I sat there. I was like, dang it. I'm not supposed to fumble. Like, that's not part of my job. But I'm like, I'm kind of out of it. So Kirby chews me out on the sideline. and I'm just taking it because I feel like I'm a good player. I kind of don't go back and forth with coaches. I know if I F up,
Sure.
I kind of take responsibility and accountability
You're
for that.
accountable.
Yeah. So then a couple drives later, they give me a 15-yard out route. I get wide open. I ran the route 1,000 times, training for it, but boom, I ran a good route. Roland puts a good ball on me. I just drop it.
Ah.
And I was like, I'm not locked in, right? So I get to the sideline. I remember my boy Tay Lynn, tight end. He said, "Yeah, people not locked in." So me and him start getting into it on the side. I was like, "I'm locked in, going back and forth." But he's like, "Bro, you already told me that you're having your kids more, bro. I'm just saying you're not locked in." So I'm like, "Whatever." But go to halftime. I have 2 drops and a fumble on my board, and then I get there and I see a picture of my son.
Ah.
And I was like, "Oh my god!" I said, "This is crazy." So like, I'm looking at him, and I remember my baby pictures. I've seen it 1,000 times. It looks just like my baby. I said, "Oh,
Really?
I got a twin. There's a second one." So I show Trey. Me and Trey are super excited in the locker room. We're obviously losing, but it's like, hey, sometimes things are bigger than football. It just is what it is.
Surely.
Um, so boom, I get there. We're happy. We post, boom. So and that day, coincidentally, is Father's Day. So it's June 19th. It's Father's Day. My son's born on Father's Day. It's awesome.
Wow.
Second half, I go out there. First catch, like a 2-yard gain. Second catch is a touchdown. Third catch is a touchdown, right? And I was just like, man, this is such a blessing. So yeah, if you my first celebration, I'm rocking the baby, and I'm trying to tell the camera, say my son was born at halftime, but they couldn't hear me because of the mic issue. But it was a cool story, and so the new baby, he's my twin. He acts just like me. He smiles, he's goofy, and
What's his name?
Israel.
Israel. Nice.
Israel, yeah. So got the same initials, same middle name, last name, obviously. So yeah, and he's a joy. And that's a good thing about being, I say, chasing your dream. And I get a little bit of free time right before camp. And so I'm just watching. I'm trying to force him to walk a little bit before I head out to Canton. He'll be about 8.5 months when I leave. So I'm like, hey, if we can kind of push the envelope here, we'll see what
Speed things up already. I got to get to work.
Absolutely. We're like kind of, and his mom was an athlete. We met in college. And so we were both athletes. So we're kind of both really, really competitive. At the Kings game, he was only 7 months and he had just learned how to crawl, like maybe 2 days before. And there was a baby crawling competition at the Sacramento Kings game versus, I forgot who they're playing. I think the Hawks maybe. And so, we put him on the floor. He got last place, didn't move. But it's sometimes about just throwing him in the fire, So, yeah, he's got to learn to lose. Let him lose. Yeah.
Let him first hard lesson.
So, but there's another one, March 4th. He's a little more prepared for a receiver. We'll throw him in that one. So we'll see how it goes.
He'll do a little bit better.
Yeah,
I won't bet on him, but he won't come in last this time.
Yeah, he's not gonna come in last this time. I think I got to stand on the edge. I'm his favorite right now because I spent so much time with him. So I got to stand at the end and let him crawl to me. We'll see how he does.
Well, progress, right? As you know, as an athlete, it's all about being better than you were the day before, right?
Exactly, 1%, man. That's all it is.
That's right. So, in addition to the new colors and the new coach and the new city, you're going to have a new quarterback too. The team went through about 4 of them last year. I don't even know that you played with all 4. Kyle Loletta might have been gone by the time you got there, or injured. But they're all gone now. Vad is gone, and Roland Rivers is gone, and Kyle has already been gone. He's on the Generals. You're going to have to start all over again with a new crop of QBs. And that's a whole nother challenge. You didn't really get used to anybody last year, did you? Actually,
and that's the thing. There was so much turnover because we wanted to find something that clicked. That was the whole goal. So obviously Vad won, and then but it's just like when you have our playbook, because we had so many new quarterbacks, it was very install one-ish. And you just feel like as an athlete, you feel like people are playing downhill. When you're on offense, when you feel the defense playing downhill and you're not taking too many shots. So I felt for that. It feels like they already know what you're going to do. And so it was tough for all the quarterbacks there because when you get a new one, then it's like, hey, we're going to run this and this. And it's like, like it's just tough. So nonetheless, though, we still got some good stuff on film. We got good stuff on tape. And I really wish I got to play with Kyle too. I loved Vad. I loved Roland. I knew Roland from a previous hub that we went to, and Roland's a competitor. Vad's a competitor. And it's fun to play with guys that just want to succeed. Rather than there's check collectors everywhere, but those, out here, a lot of people don't want to just collect a check unless, they're like 35, 34 plus. And there's, I got a quick, 45,000, but everyone else like, no, we're trying to get somewhere, and they all got goals, so everyone wants to be successful. But yeah, it's hard to create that because and me, I feel like I'm not a politician, but I like to be in with the quarterback because I play slot. So it's like, hey, we want to be on the same page. And so we're like, hey, I got an option route called. I got to know. So what are you going to see? What am I going to see? And I feel like I have a decent IQ, and I want to say above average IQ on the game. I'm a football fanatic, so I watch a lot of tape. I'm gonna say, hey, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do this. So let's be ready for that. If they call this play, then we want to be here. This is where I'm gonna be. So throw the ball there. So that was me and Vad. Me and Vad always saw eye to eye. So then after Vad, one of Vad's games, then Roland comes in. So now I'm trying to get me and Roland on the same page. I say, hey, boom. And then the last game against Michigan, he said, hey, Vad's going to play the first quarter. Then Roland's going to play 2 quarters, and then Vad's going to play again. So I'm like, I'm just out here trying to, hey, this is what we're going to do and try to get everybody on the same page. And that's tough. So the number one goal for us this year is going to be consistency and execution. That's really going to be it. It's just how consistent can we be everywhere? Can we get consistent, execution and production out of every spot? And that's kind of our goal. I've talked to the OC, we talked to the quarterbacks, and we're like, hey, that's what we're going for. So it's just nice when at least on paper, at least, up front, everyone's on the same page in terms of what we want out of the season. And so that's kind of the most important thing to us. And so, yeah, consistency and execution is what you can kind of expect from the Maulers this year on offense, at least.
I think that's a nice, steady approach, consistency and execution, because those are things that you can fully control, right? You can't control how the ball bounces. You can't control a bad flag by a ref. You can't control, lots of things, the weather, for example. But consistency and execution, you can. And I believe almost everybody I've spoken to, Isiah, all expects you guys to be much better this year and much more competitive. Part of it because of your new coach, Ray Horton, changing the culture. You're going to have at least a home field. We'll see how the crowds turn out in Canton to support the Pittsburgh Maulers and the Generals, for that matter. I don't know how many people are driving from Jersey 7.5 hours to see the New Jersey Generals play. When are you planning on heading out to Canton? Like, what's your time frame now?
I'm trying to soak up all the time with my son. But I told work, say, hey, I'm gonna start dwindling down on hours because I'm fully into the training mode. My diet is fully kicked in now, so I'm trying to get that right. So yeah, I'm expecting to head out there a couple of days before we're supposed to report, just to get settled into the hotel and stuff. It's all it's kind of crazy because last year I was so excited to go, and this year it's bittersweet because I'm so excited to go, but my son's not going out there with me, so it's like I just love his little face so much. And we just went on vacation and we left the baby with my mom, and she could tell you we called her probably 15 times a day just to see him, like, hey, how's he doing? Checking in on him. So just very, very active in the dad role. So it's tough, nice. But nonetheless, I get a full season. I get to do what I love, and I get to put myself, in position to, put my whole family in a good position. So that's kind of my goal. I'm really locked in, laser focused on what I can do this year to make sure all that kind of goes well.
You're a really focused guy, and I really love to hear that kind of determination. Tell me, you mentioned work. What kind of job you have in the off season to hold you over till camp starts again? What are you doing?
So I got my degree in kinesiology. So a lot of times, so that's one way to stay into the game is
right.
Trying to push forward the next group of athletes. And so I was very much into the athletes world. I used to work out with a team out here, Game Fit, and super grateful for them and everything they were able to do in my career. And just that facility and everything. They're just a good family oriented place. Nonetheless, I'm a personal trainer. So I say all that to say I'm a personal trainer. I help other people reach their goals.
Nice.
And that's it's awesome to give back, and it's awesome to do that. So right now it's with 24-hour fitness. So it's not as many athletes this time around, but it's a little more, steady in terms of paycheck. So it's a little different, but nonetheless, it's somewhere you can create your own hours. And then outside of creating your own hours, I have a place to work out for free where I could just get my lifting done. And it was essential in terms of this off season for me, just staying in shape. So I liked it.
It's a nice combination of A, using your degree, B, taking advantage of the environment to keep your own personal fitness going. for
Absolutely.
training. And like you said, you get that. Were you helping more people in the general population than you were athletes this time around?
Yeah, and yeah, a lot more Gen Pop, and it's it's bittersweet. There's beauty in it, but like with athletes, it's fun because they're gonna come every day motivated. And it's like sometimes they're more their parents than them, but nonetheless, like the athletes want goals, and it's so much easier for that aspect to be like, hey, I'm gonna show you things that I wish I did, things that I know now that I wish I knew when I was 15. And
Right.
so if you apply this, then you're gonna be golden. And a lot of those guys, like we got recruits, that I was able to help. Now I wasn't their main trainer by any stretch of the imagination, but you got guys going, San Jose State, Notre Dame, just big
Yeah,
time
yeah.
places, and it's just awesome to see work ethic and everything kind of just fruits of their labor type of deal. But then when you go Gen Pop, you have people who say, "Oh, I've had a back issue because I have a bad back," and so you're like, okay, so it forces you to apply more knowledge. So it's like, what did I learn? How does this muscle help this muscle? How can I help them because they can't do a squat properly? So how can I still get the how can I still get the mobility and the strength inside of the muscle without them doing the squat? And so it forces me to kind of be back in my book and back into what I learned in college,
Yeah.
um, more than the athletes, because the athletes say, hey, this is what I did on the field. And sometimes it's just tempo, sometimes it's repetitions, So whereas the older people is working around injuries, making sure they don't hurt themselves more. So there's beauty in both sides of it, and I don't necessarily love one more than the other. I love working out myself more than both.
Right.
Yeah, I like playing football more than training. I could say that.
It's funny as I listen to you talk, I can relate to all of that, Isaiah, first of all, because I'm also a personal trainer.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm a certified personal trainer as well. I've trained both sides, general pop and the athletes. And you're right. Like the athletes, you have to force them, but it's a different kind. Whereas with the general population, you're almost coddling and easing them into it because they're so deconditioned. And I'm not saying this in any negative way because these are all
Right.
my past clients, right? It blows me away sometimes, Isaiah, when I speak to a prospect and I say, "Hey, so when's the last time you exercised?" And some people say never,
Right.
like they've never exercised in their life, and they're like 50 years old.
Yeah. And they're dead
And
serious. And it's like, dude.
I don't even understand that.
Yeah. It's tough,
Yeah.
especially because, like my life is so encompassed in just being athletic and working out all the time that when someone doesn't work out at all, I'm like, well, this is what's wrong with your back, brother. You gotta do that. So,
It's the
it's tough.
truth.
Yeah.
That saying, I hear the saying a lot because I'm around people of my age, and they'll say getting old sucks, and I say no, 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 being unfit sucks.
Yeah, no. And one of my good friends' dads, Clark Bartram, he's like a men's health fitness physique model. He's super dope, and he has so much energy. He's like 60, shredded everywhere.
Wow.
And so it's funny. Like when you see his energy, he's very very well known across the fitness population. So I picked up a lot of stuff from him in terms of how to work around stuff when you get older. Whereas like you're talking about with the Gen Pop, it's like I'm lucky if they show up. I mean,
That's the worst when they don't show up to a session,
yeah,
and then you lose out on the training money, and then you lose out on your
yeah.
hour, and then you got to like charge them. And
And 24, they're like, hey man, if they're on your schedule and they don't tell you early enough, burn. I'm like, dang. I just
I
feel
hate.
bad. They pay $700 for the training, and I'm like, they're not even coming. I just feel bad. So I mean, yeah, it's like I said, bittersweet. That's my favorite thing to say about it.
We're probably boring the audience with personal training
Yeah.
talk right now too,
Yeah.
Isaiah. But hey, we're both into it, so still makes for good conversation.
Absolutely.
I did not know what to expect before speaking with you, and I'm blown away at the type of dude that you are.
I
I'm
appreciate you.
excited. I'm excited for your 2023 season. I'm excited for baby Israel. I'm excited for your wife. I'm excited for your season.
Thank you.
And please stay in touch with us as we get through training camp, would you? And of course, during the regular season, I want to be talking to you too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Just obviously you have my contact info, so yeah, just go ahead and let me know anytime. I have no problem talking to you. It's always fun to have a good conversation, especially now with the personal trainer. So I might run something by you, say, hey, how do you feel about something with because of my knees, man? Like there's certain things I like to go about a certain way, so I always like to get other people's perspective on certain movements.
Cool. I don't know if I can hang knowledge wise with a guy with a kinesiology degree. I only got the certificate, so
No worries, man. Like hey, it's all about fitness. It's all in the same
that's the
family.
truth. That's the truth. Isaiah, thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Isiah Hennie, what a great guy from the Pittsburgh Maulers, wide receiver. I'm really looking forward to seeing him playing in 10 games and maybe even an 11th game this year. You never know, right? If things go well for the Pittsburgh Maulers. That's it for this week's edition of USFL Today. Make sure you subscribe. YouTube at USFL Today. Make sure you follow this account at USFL Today on Twitter, and also follow our Generals account at NJ_Generals. Again, that's it for USFL Today. We'll see you next week with another current USFL player. Thanks for listening.